Hi there, this is Joanne from TrueAuthenticPower.com from Tapping.me, and I'm also the creator of the program Catapulting to Confidence. I get some inquiries or people asking how to do certain things. Can tapping really help change your life? And a bunch of other questions. And I wanted to address some of the things for me, and I'm making this very clear. This was for me, some of the things that I needed to move out of the way, and maybe it will help you too. Or maybe it will help you look at some aspects of your life in different ways that maybe were working against you, but you didn't know it. And today's topic, and the reason I'm saying, again, this is for me, for my journey, what I went through, what I discovered, is because it's regarding church and religion and what that kind of messed up for me until I found a path that made me feel very close and connected. So I'll just give you the overview of the scoop, and you can understand, because I talk a lot about subconscious beliefs and how things get programmed in as an early age. And as a young girl, I went through Catholic school, K through 12. And the K through 8 was very mean kind of attitude. Not every class was taught by somebody in the Catholic religion, but we did have a lot of nuns in the school I went to. And the beginning stages, if you've ever heard some of my other intros to some of my life, those were not pleasant and they were mean people. So, okay, before the age of 7, what we see, feel, and experience around us forms our belief. What I saw before the age of 7 was mean people. And if you're related to God or you're close to God, I don't want any part of it. That was my first introduction. Second thing was, because I went to a Catholic school and we were on the property of the Catholic Church, we did Stations of the Cross. And I hated it. I hated it, hated it, hated it. Every year, there was an echo in the church that was uncomfortable. It felt very cold. The whole story of it is very upsetting, very, not just upsetting, but for a person who's pretty in touch with emotions, and I didn't know it back then, but energy of things and what comes at us, what was influencing me, that was really dark, and I hated it. And of course, you have to do it. That's what our Catholic school did. And I remember thinking years later, if I were to tell a client to keep focusing on the horrible, and you do that with tapping to some extent, but you're moving it out. You're not reinforcing it and saying, here, look at this horrible thing, and look at this horrible thing, and look at this horrible thing. That's not the point of working with tapping or any other energy tools. What you're trying to do is get in touch with the energy and move it out, not to keep revisiting it. So that whole thing didn't make sense to me. And then there's a saying in Catholicism that I grew up with week after week, because good Catholic people go to church every Sunday. Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you, but just say the word and I am healed. Do you know, if someone says to you week after week, and the message associated with that person, with that thing, with that event says, you're not good enough. If I were looking at that from a tapping energy perspective, I would be saying they are giving the wrong message. That's not who you need to follow. That's not what you need to go towards, because they're not seeing the greatness within you and encouraging that. They're stifling you, keeping you controlled, keeping the focus on how we can push those buttons to make you do what we want out of guilt, regret, fear, anxiety. I'm just saying, look at the parallels that I have seen now being in energy work for a long time now, as opposed to what I learned growing up. I'm trying to show you what influenced me and why it didn't feel good. Okay, so later years, some people may know from some of my other podcasts that people died and got ill and died that were very, very close to me, and it kept coming. There was a barrage of things that were so difficult and so hard. And I was looking for community, because I had been home caretaking, and now I was working out of my home, very isolated with all these grief feelings and really heavy, heavy emotions to try to go through without a loved one, without a partner, without parents, without family around me to help me. It was really a really difficult time. So I was looking for community. Okay, so where do you hear about community? Churches, right? Okay, so I didn't have the best of the foundation for churches and community, but I went to this group and they had just kind of a discussion thing. And I'm all about debating and discussing, and not debating so much, but just, throwing around different ideas and what your experience means as opposed to mine and that kind of stuff. And so we would watch these videos and then we would talk about it. Nice relief. Yes? Okay, yes. I met some wonderful people in that church, in that group. Very nice people. I got invited to a personal home group. And that's where it kind of was like, this is not fitting for me. We'd watch this video. It was the same kind of things that I learned as a kid that didn't sit well. And while they were very nice people, there was always a lot of alcohol in this group. And it didn't, I'm not saying you can't drink. I'm not saying you shouldn't drink. But it seemed like there was a lot of covering up of true feelings and a lot of answers. And some of the conversation was just coming out as rote programming instead of what do we really feel and how do we really get a closer relationship with the divine. It felt very superficial to me. It felt very surface level. And that's not taking away that these people were very nice people, but they were reliving the stuff that they learned growing up, which I learned growing up that didn't fit. So here I am in the same, what did I expect? I was in a church group, right? Okay, so I went to another church group, non-denominational, and that group was so full of worry about the rules of how you need to be in a group. So here's what happened. There was a woman sitting next to me. This was all women in this particular group. There was a woman sitting next to me, and she was saying how she was struggling with too many responsibilities after her husband had left. And she needed to make a major decision on something with her house. And she said, it overwhelmed me. And I'm thinking to myself, I've lost my partner of 20 years, my sweetheart Ray. My parents are both gone. I don't have a good relationship with some other family members because it just felt not good to me. And you feel overwhelmed. I know it wasn't necessarily right to compare, and I wasn't trying to compare, but I was thinking, I wish I only had that one problem. And it tweaked me enough into memory of feeling overwhelmed as she was describing what she was saying. And I went into tears, which is not something I normally do in a group, or at least I didn't at the time, that I would readily just fall apart like that. And the striking thing was, here we are in a church group trying to get closer to community and feelings of being supported. And there wasn't a single person who reached out to me. And I brought it up later as I was getting ready to leave the group, which they were all surprised that I was leaving. And I said, I want to tell you why. I fell apart in the group and not a single person reached out, reached over, gave me a hug, comforted me, said, what do you need? And it came out in the discussion, which was really very good, but it still wasn't a supportive place for me. It came out in the discussion of, we didn't know if we could do that. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I wanted to reach out to you. And there was all this outpouring of love, but there was this whole big wall because you're in a church group that has certain rules of how you're supposed to do it. And they were so hung up on the rules, they couldn't be true and authentic to what they wanted to do and how they wanted to respond to me. It was really a great discussion, and I have no animosity at all for that, as I don't for the first group. But again, it wasn't what I needed. Because if you're just going on being fearful of being authentic and being heartfelt, that's not the place for me. You get what I'm saying? It seemed like there was so much programming, as I had received as well, that turned people more into robots instead of being and speaking their true authentic selves. And that's what I was seeking, because I was already a coach working with energy. I was already knowing that that was my exploration avenue, and I wasn't finding it. So I went into a third group. I know I'm a slow learner. I can't help it. I was so desperate for community and working out of your house. Where do you go to find that? So I was still trying. So I go to a third group, which was full of lovely, lovely people. And there was discussion, and there was openness, and there was sharing of food, which was wonderful. And even people who had families really looked forward to that get together. And it was joyful and explorative and sharing of ideas. And while, again, it got to a certain point for me, because it's still based in the churchy, this is the kind of stuff, it eventually started feeling like I was feeling like maybe I needed to move on, but it wasn't get me out of here, move on. It was thank you so much for the support and being able to be myself and speak my truth, as everybody else in the group seemed to be able to do as well. It was just so nice to be around authentic people who were figuring out their path, their journey with the divine, with God, with however you want to label that for you. And it was so striking to me of how robotic some things in churches can be. I'm speaking from my experience. There's so many right and wrongs. There's so many have to do it this way. And one of the other things that I did go to before going to the home group of the last group that I mentioned, it was an introduction to different videos and discussion. And I like that kind of stuff. So I thought, okay, well, maybe there's something here that will open me up or open my mind or change my beliefs or change something that might be comforting or a way I never thought of it before. And in that group, we were at a table of, I think there were 5 or 6 people, and we were discussing different things. And there was a gentleman at that table who said, every time I read the Bible, it just makes me feel worse. And because I work with energy and I know everybody's path is not the same to get to the same kind of desired end result, I said to him, maybe that's not your avenue to have a relationship. If you're forcing it and it doesn't feel good, and there was somebody else at the table that was saying, but keep doing it and keep doing it. And I'm like, no. And I want to tell you what opened up my path to a very solid feeling of the divine and being able to listen to my intuition, because I do think that comes divinely, and doing EFT the way I do it, because many people have told me it's like you're inside my mind, like you're channeling something that just comes through you. And I would agree with that. I wouldn't have said that growing up. I wouldn't have said I had that kind of guidance growing up. I wouldn't have said I had that kind of looking and listening for that kind of divine guidance. I would not have said that. I wouldn't have said that I was looking for or listening to that kind of divine guidance until all that happened. Now, ironically, who introduced me to EFT? I got it to this is so ironic. I got to learn it and see it in action. Actually, I didn't learn it from him, but I did see it in action from a priest. How ironic is that? And I remember thinking, how did he get from the tried and true, so firmly embedded, this is the way you have to have a relationship. And he was, a Catholic priest, resembling that whole kind of stuff I grew up with that felt so not so nice. But he was teaching energy classes on the side, and that was my entrance to starting to see God and the divine in a different way. It didn't come from the ways it was supposed to. It didn't come from the people or the sayings or the beliefs or the protocol or the pomp and circumstance. It came from a totally side view that really resonated with my heart. Now, I had an experience. I had sung with a big band years ago, and it was my first gig with that band. And I was really, it was kind of a stage performance. And I'm not so keen on stages, to be honest with you. They don't really thrill me. I don't have a desire to be, seen and out there like that. It's just not my thing. So I was really nervous, and I was praying on the side behind the curtain of this stage. And I was saying things like, please just don't let me fall. Please just don't let me trip or forget the words. It doesn't even have to be the greatest, but please don't let me embarrass myself. I'm so nervous. I'm so scared. And I'm saying this in my head, having this conversation. And I felt this hand on my shoulder. There was no one around. But after I felt that hand on my shoulder, I got calmer. I was still excited, but I was calmer. So I learned from that point on, and fast forward through the things with my mom and my sweetheart Ray, all the illnesses, I was absolutely, my intuition went soaring. There were a lot of things that I intuitively knew that were proven true after the fact or even sometimes during the fact. But I never was allowed to use my intuition or to develop a relationship that felt good to me with God, with the divine, with that higher power, that higher energy, that guidance, that intuition. I was always overridden because of the controlling people that said, you have to do it this way. It has to be this way. You have to go to church every Sunday or else. If you mess up, be a God-fearing person. And it was said with such, and I'm thinking, why would anybody want to get close to that? It scared me. It didn't comfort me. It scared me. My point of all these stories is not just to spill my guts with you or to get comments that, I'm telling you my story, my evolution. I feel like I have a lot of guidance. I feel like I have a very strong intuition, and I consider that God sent. I did not learn that through church avenues. I did not learn that through church groups. I did not learn that through the tried and true, read the Bible, do these things, do these, things that you're supposed to do in the way that all of us have been taught. I learned it from a priest doing energy work. Now, I can't even tell you the evolution of all that, and that would take another probably too long if I could even recall how all that evolved. But my point is, I knew there was something there. When Ray and Mom were sick, I was very clear that I was divinely guided to certain things and doing certain things in certain ways and going down certain avenues. And it taught me a ton about energy and how things work and how the beliefs can really get in your way or help you depending on how they're programmed. If you're very afraid of certain avenues, it will grip you, make you subconsciously repel and recoil against certain things, certain places, people, situations. And the point is to ease up and create a joyful life that feels good, that feels authentic, that is who you were meant to be. And so I put out some of these stories and some of these different angles, not to have you agree with me, not to have you say, oh, that happened to me too. That's not the point. The point is I was brought up in ways that worked against me, that didn't feel comforting to me, that weren't authentic to who I was, didn't feel right. I didn't see people working together in camaraderie, in belonging, in community. I saw people who were programmed to give robotic responses, to do robotic answers, to say the things that you were taught to say, whether it made sense to you or not. I'm sorry, but when I say something like, I'm not worthy to receive you, that does not sit lightly. In fact, that feels very heavy. And that's what a lot of people were programmed to believe. Be afraid. Be afraid, otherwise I'll just put you into hell. Really? And you want me to get close to that kind of energy, that kind of being, that kind of, no, that doesn't work for me. I'm not saying this for you. I'm not saying this for anybody else. I'm just saying this is one example of something that I really had to unravel and get a perspective and a clearer energetic interaction before I could feel that in my heart and feel safe. A lot of people talk about, I pray when I'm scared, or I pray when I need help, or whatever. And for you who are brought up in that way, that you can go to that avenue for help, that's a wonderful thing. For the rest of us, or some of us anyway, that didn't feel like that was even an option because it was so scary and so negative and so fearful with punishment and watch out, otherwise I'm going to come get you and put you into purgatory or hell. Really, you want me to follow that, to open up to that, to be in union with that and ask for help? Are you kidding me? That doesn't even go together. Like I said, my point of some of these discussions or stories or things that I'm talking about, I had to unravel some of that before I could feel safe asking that energy, that power for help. Whether you label it as God or the universe. And I had someone in one of the groups say they were talking about being in AA, and it really rubbed them the wrong way when some people would say universe instead of God. And I explained to her that some people would use universe instead of God because of the connotation of what God was associated with. It doesn't make them wrong. It makes them saying, yes, I want to be guided and led. I want to connect to that kind of loving energy. How do I do it when, if I even say the word, it brings up a negative connotation? I don't know if she ever got it, but that's why a lot of people use alternative words, because of what that meaning of saying God might be associated with. It doesn't make them bad or wrong. It makes them seeking out their path to try to, how do I get close to that kind of divine guidance? How do I listen to that kind of divine guidance? How do I have a relationship in that way? Maybe too long a story, but I wanted to just go through that discussion because I know I'm not alone with some of these feelings. I've had other discussions with other people that have felt very similar things. My point is, whether it's religion, the church, other aspects of your life, what do you need to unravel and unhook from energetically that keep you in fight, flight, freeze, worry, fearful, being punished, all that kind of negative energy? What do you need to unravel or change your perspective on so that you can live in a more peaceful, connected, loving existence? This is one avenue. It's certainly not the only one I'm going to be talking about, but this is one avenue, and I hope it helps. If this kind of information or different perspective, this is not about a religion discussion. Please understand that. I was using that as an avenue to describe what was going on behind the scenes and how it landed for me. It's not about church. It's not about religion. Nobody needs to defend their point of view. I'm just telling you how it felt for me and the story I went through until I could get to a much more loving interaction and association with that higher divine energy. If you like these kind of discussions, if they help you open up some avenues that you may be believing that are keeping you in fright, in scared mode, in tension and tightness, or you get triggered and you don't even know what's underneath, I'm hoping that some of these stories will guide you in a way to think outside the box, that there may be ways to get what you need in other ways that were never shown to you, in other ways that you never knew about. And I'm telling you, it really floored me when I was introduced to a priest who knew about energy tools and how that opened me up. He wasn't preaching about how that can open you up to God or the divine. He was just showing me ways to unfurl and uncover and release the stuff that had me in a grip. And I'm telling you, religion and the church absolutely had me in a grip. And I repelled against it instead of being guided by it. And it has changed my life to be guided in that way. So I hope it helps. I hope it brings you some insight. It's not just on the religion topic. This can apply to anything in your life that is really causing you angst, that is causing you a disturbing upset, that you kind of know is there, but you're shoving it down and not paying attention to it. Those are the things that grip your energy, that control your life in unconscious ways that you don't even know are there. So the discussion, my sharing stories, is to help you see what you might be doing that's unconscious that may need some tweaking, perception changes, and some energy tapping or any other energy tools that you can use that will release that angst. Because when you think about certain things and they still bring you in angst, you're holding the energy of it. I hope it helps. If you like these kind of discussions, well, it's not really a discussion because it's one-sided, huh? But you get the idea. If you like these kind of thought-provoking things that go on behind the scenes of your energy and your subconscious mind, sign up, subscribe to my channel, put the alerts on, send me emails if you have questions. Be nice. This is about my story, and my story isn't going to fit everybody or look the same as what you were raised to think. My point is, we have a duty and an honor to ourselves and our lives to figure out a heartfelt path. And I hope this helped in some way. Maybe next time I'll be talking about family interactions and what that means and what you've been taught to believe that might not be working for you and how it can, or what you might see differently about it or whatever. So stay tuned and share with me. Have you had this kind of experience where things that you grew up with never felt right for you as a child, and you kind of took it on because that's what you were taught, and it didn't really feel right or work right for you or whatever. It doesn't have to be about this topic, but have you ever found yourself in the shoes where, nope, that never felt right. It still doesn't feel right. It didn't fit me. It doesn't fit me. And you need some tweaking or some rebalancing to some of that energy, and what maybe got locked in link that could be working against you, or at least it's not in alignment with you. That's where tapping can be a great help. That's where energy tools can be of great benefit. And I share these stories to give examples of how things can manifest, can show up, can be part of your automatic responses towards things, and you're not even paying attention of how much that might be working against you. Share your story. Do you have some of this going on in you? Does this resonate for you? Can you relate in this way or in a different story? Everybody's life is a little bit different, but we do have tendencies to lock into those things that we learned in early ages, and they keep replaying and replaying and replaying, even when they don't fit us. And it's almost like we get sucked into an undertow of a current that you might know you need something else. I mean, how many times did I go back to a church group trying to have it fit or work or bring comfort, and it didn't really do that? Well, it did in the last group to some extent, but you get what I'm saying. How many times do we go back into the same thing, and it's not working, and we keep doing it? And then then we label ourselves of, what the heck is wrong with me? Why do I keep doing this? It's an energetic pull, and tapping can unravel those kind of things. And the good news is about tapping is that you can put in what you want, of how you want it to look, how you want relationships to be, how you want certain things in your life to feel or be part of your experience. So again, I hope this helps, and until our paths cross again next time, bye-bye for now.